very first step that you need to do in sourdough is the feeding of the starter. So this is your yeast that you're going to be using. I've been growing this starter for, today is its 16th day birthday, and he is a basic starter. He is made with just regular plain old tap water and all-purpose flour. This is from Aldi. It's like $2 or $3 a bag. No big deal. We have warm tap water, and one of the most important tools that you're going to need when you're starting your sourdough journey, or really any baking journey, you need a kitchen scale. When you start a sourdough starter, what I've been doing is equal parts flour and water. Flour, flour, and water. So what we're going to do right now, without any further ado, is feed the sourdough starter so that we can use it in a little bit. Now, when you're first building a starter, you do equal parts water and flour. Today, because I'm going to be using it for baking, I'm going to do a little bit of a higher ratio of flour to water. The amount of starter and flour is going to be the same, but it will be less water in the mix. So I'm going to tear out my scale right now. That means zero it out with a clean container on there. And this is warm water from the tap. You don't want to start with cold water because yeast likes a nice toasty environment. So we're going to start with 5 ounces of water. Actually, we're going to do 6 ounces of water today. Okay, we got 6 ounces of warm water. And then I like to do the flour on top of that, and then the starter on top of that. So we have 6 ounces of water, and we're going to do 8 ounces of flour. So the next step is to weigh the starter, and as soon as I take the plastic off of that, you can smell that it's really nice and fermented. It smells like yogurt. Look at that texture. It's beautiful. It smells a little bit like beer, and that's because what you're doing is fermenting. So when you have yeast and you feed it the sugars that are in flour, you ultimately are causing a fermentation process to begin where the yeast eats the sugar and then it excretes CO2. That's why you see the bubbles, because the CO2 is there and the alcohol is a byproduct. So what I have in my container right now is 6 ounces of warm water. I have 8 ounces of all-purpose flour, and I accidentally overpoured 9 ounces of starter into my container, which is fine. So I'm going to use a chopstick to mix it up. You can also use your hands or a spoon. You just want to make sure that if you're using a container with corners like I am, that you get into all of those corners with your stirring implement. So you just stir this up till it's nice and smooth, and then you're left with something that looks somewhere between pancake dough and cookie dough. So it's going to be a little bit, it's going to be much thinner than cookie dough, but not quite as thin as pancake dough. I'm just going to stir this up. I've been wanting to do sourdough for a long time, and it's just something that really requires the time commitment, because if you're storing it on the counter, you really have to feed it every single day, otherwise it runs out of sugar. You can starve the yeast to death. But if you're storing it in the refrigerator, that's a whole other story. So this is fully mixed. It looks like a really thick flour mixture. I don't know if you guys can see that. And you don't want to add too much, you don't want to stir it too vigorously because you don't want to develop any gluten. First step, feed your starter and then leave it on the counter somewhere warm. Cover it up. Leave it on the counter somewhere warm for 3 hours or so, and then when you come back, it will have doubled in size and it's ready to use. Oh, one other thing that I like to do real quick is take a piece of Scotch tape and stick it on the container and then draw a line with Sharpie so that you can see the progress as it rises. So So this is the same exact starter that I made earlier, y'all. It's beautiful. You can see it's practically doubled in size. You can see all those bubbles. Babe, do you want to tilt the camera down? So that means it's nice and ready. So the first thing we're gonna do is measure out our water. So we're gonna start with some warm water. You don't want it to be too warm, you don't want it to be too cold, just a little bit above body temperature. I don't have any specialty flours at home right now, so I'm just using regular AP, and we have 687 grams here that I've already weighed out. So we're gonna do our water. Let's turn on our scale. It's on grams and it's zeroed out. So we're gonna do 397 grams of water. There we go, 397 grams. And then we're gonna put in our flour. I like mixing by hand, so we're mixing by hand. All right, and we need 454 grams of ripe sourdough starter. You can look at that beautiful texture. Gorgeous. It's very viscous. You don't want to necessarily stir this at all because you're going to knock out all of that beautiful air. This recipe is going to yield 2 loaves. Almost there. 100 more grams and we'll be good. And you can see I almost used all of my starter. So hopefully this works. So I'm just going to set this aside, cover it up, and let it keep growing, and then I'll feed it again in a little while. So you just go in with your hands, and what you're doing right now is just hydrating the flour that you've added. And then we'll let this sit for 20 minutes to do something called autolyse, which is when the flour just gets fully hydrated. So I'm just really gently stirring this in. It doesn't have to be a super smooth dough at this stage. And it's okay if it's sticky. Sourdough is going to be stickier than your average dough. And then I'm going to go in with my bowl scraper and really use that as an extension of my hand to incorporate everything. And you can do this in a bigger bowl if you want. Almost done for the most part. So this is ready for its 20-minute rest. And I'm going to transfer it to this bowl here, this second bowl that I have, so that it can just be in a nice clean bowl. Because all of these little scraggly bits that are on the sides can dry out, and we don't want to incorporate dried dough into our final product. Hi guys! So we're back 20 minutes later, roughly 30 minutes maybe. And this is our dough. You can see it's got lots of condensation on top. It was nice and warm. It feels really nice and soft. So what we're gonna do right now is we are gonna knead it. And we're gonna sprinkle a little bit of flour onto the counter. Not a whole lot, because you want to really rely on a lot of the stickiness that's happening here. You don't wanna work in too much extra flour. So we're gonna scrape it out onto the counter. And then we're gonna add in our salt. This is 2.5 teaspoons of kosher salt. It's important that you don't add the salt in before when you're adding in the starter, because you will inhibit the yeast. So what we're gonna do right now is just fold it over on itself, and then we're gonna pick it up, slap it down, and fold it over. We're gonna pick it up, slap it down, and fold it over. So you pick it up, slap it down, fold it over, and it gets nice and sticky. The texture of this has already drastically improved from when I first took it out of the bowl. It already looks smoother. So I'm just gonna add a little flour to my hands, and then slap it down, turn it over. This is really oddly satisfying. I kind of love making bread. You can see that it's getting a much nicer texture much less sticky even. Adding a little bit of flour to my hands is really helping. But you're utilizing the stickiness of the dough to get it to really like stick to itself. After we knead it and it's nice and smooth, we will let it rise again for an hour. So I'm just gonna fold it up on itself so that all those little shreds get reincorporated. So I think this is actually almost done, you guys. But you can see the texture of this dough has completely changed from when I started. It is much softer, much smoother, significantly smoother. That's it, y'all. You just knead it, flour your hands as needed. So the next step after this is letting it rest for another hour. So I'm gonna just flour my hands again, use bowl scraper, fold the dough up on itself a couple of times, and then I'll go back to kneading it the way that I was previously. Can you see the texture difference? It's much smoother. And I would say throughout this process in getting my hands with flour on them, I've added maybe a scant quarter cup of flour. It's much less sticky, very supple, nice and soft. So we'll dump out just a little more flour here, sprinkle a little on top. Set it inside our bowl. So we've got our nice warm dry bowl. I get a little flour on my hands so that it doesn't stick. Sprinkle a little flour on the bottom. And I'm just like really gently spreading the flour. Gather up the dough and drop it into the bowl. And then we will cover it with plastic wrap and come back to it in another hour. Now, when we come back in an hour, literally all we're gonna do is do 2 more turns like I just did on the table, but in the bowl. And then we're gonna let it rise for another hour. So now we're gonna turn it out and do a pre-shape on it to get the dough used to being in the shape of a boule for when we bake it. And then we'll let it rest again for another 20 minutes. So I'm gonna turn this out. Perfect. Look at that. Look at the ooze. I had this resting just on a towel on top of a burner that had been just warmed up for like 10 seconds and then turned off. So it was given a really nice warm environment to sit in. I'm gonna just sprinkle a little bit of flour right on top. Dust it around. So we're just gonna cut it in half with a bench knife, really gently. And then we are gonna shape this into a really loose bowl. So I'm just tucking the sides up into the center and then pinching it so that it's sealed. And then we will just proof it just on the counter, just like this. And then with this one, we're just gonna move it over a little bit and do the same thing. Just pulling from the outside into the center, rotating a little bit as I go, and then pulling it all together so that there's a nice seam. And that's it. That's it for pre-shape. And then I'm just gonna cover these really lightly with a piece of plastic wrap. for that part. While we're waiting, we can do our bowls. You need a bowl, a towel, and a sifter. What you're gonna do is stretch out your towel and lay it inside the bowl, like so. Give it a nice little nest, push it down so that it fills in all of those spots, all of the empty spots, but you wanna make it as flat as possible on the inside. You're gonna take your sifter, so I'm just gonna scoop out some flour and just tap the sifter and make sure that the whole bowl is, the whole inside of the towel is really nice and well coated with flour. Once we turn it out of here, we're not gonna do anything else to it. That one is nice and prepped. So we have our second bowl here. Dust, 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 dust. Our second bowl is nice and prepped. So the timer's gonna go off any second. I'm gonna peel this plastic wrap off of one bowl, and then we're gonna do our final shape. So we're just doing one more final shape, tucking all the edges in, pinching it so that it's nice and sealed, and then we'll tip it into the bowls. I'm gonna use my bench scraper to help me pick it up. That's good. Make sure that I'm doing this right. That's how I remember how to do it. So you're stretching it, creating really nice surface tension, and pinching it in the center to seal, to create a good seal. Well, they recommend doing this to seal it. Straight into the flour. All right, it's not gonna be as super round as I want it to be, but it's gonna be fine, you know? The seal on this one looks much better than the seal on this one. So dragging it across the table like that, even though it stuck to my hands, really made a difference. So we're gonna cover these up, just like this, and we'll come back to them in 2 hours and bake them off. So right now I have our fully proofed sourdough. So I have the oven preheated at 450 degrees Fahrenheit with a pizza stone and a cast iron skillet inside. Hold on to your butts. Not bad at all. And I'm just gonna dust away some of the extra flour, the excess from the towel. So I have the blade from a safety razor, and I bent it a little bit and stuck it on the end of a chopstick. But doing this really makes it easy to score your bread because it's on a really long stick, so you have a lot of fluidity. You're not stuck using a teeny tiny tool or trying to handle a bulky plastic handle or anything. Let's do, there we go, okay. There we go. Make them a little deeper. Perfect. This one looks really good too. This is that second one that I had the really tight seam on. So we're just gonna really fast. It's important to do it fast so it doesn't get misshapen. 1, 2, 3. Beautiful. Okay. That's the trick, is to be confident and go fast. So plan B is to slide this onto a sheet tray, like that. We're gonna go to the oven, pull this rack out a little bit, and we're gonna slide very carefully. This is very dangerous. We're gonna slide our bread onto our stone. Then we're gonna put our pot holder back on and push this inside. The next step is to add about 2 cups of water to this cast iron pan. And then we close the oven. And we're gonna set it for about 30 minutes. The oven just went off on the loaf and oh my God, it looks amazing. All right, you see that steam that came out? That was beautiful. So we're just gonna grab the edge and slide it right on. And then we're gonna close the oven. And there's our beautiful loaf of sourdough, you guys. Absolutely stunning. The sourdough looks so perfect and I could not be more excited. It smells amazing. It smells perfect. I feel like I can't stop looking at this sexy, sexy piece of bread. Oh my God, I can't stop touching it. Stop touching it. So we can start to handle it. It's cool enough on the edges for me to grip. If we tap on it, I don't know if you can hear that. Hopefully it's nice and airy. It's nice and, can you guys hear that? Sounds hollow. I'm really anxious. I really want to cut into it. All right, I'm gonna do it, y'all. All right, I'm just gonna do it. I'm really excited. I think I want to try it. All right, so the first thing we gotta do, observe its crispiness. I want to squeeze it and see if it's nice and crispy. That was nice. So I'm gonna tip the loaf on its side so that there's less surface for me to saw through, and that'll help us have a cleaner cut. You wanna make sure you're going in really clean back and forth motions. You don't wanna put any downward pressure on this. You just want the knife to do all of the work, because if you do any downward pressure at all while you're cutting, you will squash the crumb. Oh my God, it's really pretty inside. This is our sourdough. It looks really good. It's super moist. There's a really nice caramelization on the crust here. It looks really nice. It looks like really good sandwich bread. Like really nice crumb, no giant holes. Let's cut some and taste it. Smells really good. All right, you ready? Moment of truth. By itself first. All right, so look how springy this is, first of all. So that's a really good sign. All right, let's try it. That's sourdough. This tastes like how sourdough is supposed to taste. It's really chewy. It makes my whole mouth salivate from that tang. And the crunch on that crust. So good. All right, we're gonna really shamelessly, heavily butter
That's fantastic. That is so good.
It's really good.
So earlier you asked me a question. Was the process worth it? From where I'm standing, absolutely. This is the best bread ever. This is it right here.
It's really good. Really delicious, you guys. Completely worth it. You can tell that it's a sourdough. It doesn't taste at all yeasty. It's really good. This texture is just beautiful. Look at this. Gorgeous. This was really fun. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope you guys maybe learned something.
I know we did.
All right, guys. Until next time.